Hase is in the studio. Let's take a look at our tips and where we sit on the tipping panel. So there's a race in at the top and there's a race at the bottom of the ladder. I'm on 120. You're 118. We both got 4 last week. Scotty's on 107 and the hammer is 104. This is a tough round, and this is a round where there's a few 50-50s, and I think I'm going to roll the dice on a couple.
No, I'm going to roll the dice. I'm going to ask you to go first in every tip.
Why is that?
Because you've had the luxury of being able to do that in recent times. You're 2 in front. Let's make a competition of it.
But, Paul, I've done my tips at the start of the year. All my tips are decided. If you go back onto the SN tipping page, my tips are done.
Has any team brought you undone? That's up the top that's not and that's down the bottom?
Oh, my team. Yeah, West Coast. I am the West Coast team. Thank you very much. No, I'm okay with my tips. All righty, here we go. I'm happy. Let's go through.
I think we think the like. I think we're going to do the same thing here.
We're about to find out. Let's go to the first game of the round, and that is tonight. And it is, of course, Essendon taking on the Sydney Swans. Friday night footy, and the game is at Marvel Stadium. I don't have the team changes; they haven't popped up on my screen at the moment. But it's hard to make a case for Essendon on where they're at. But gee, there's still plenty at stake.
So who are you tipping?
I'm actually trying to find the lineup.
Archie Perkins, Sam Wiedemann in, Nick Cox, Elwyn
all right, mate.
David
Okay, mate.
Jr.
Okay,
out.
don't talk over me, mate. I was just waiting for my computer. Chad Warner's out, and Robbie Fox.
Calf injury. Not ideal, this close to finals.
Well, Malacan and Corey Warner in. Nick Cox. See, Nick Cox is out. Elwyn David, Perkins and Wiedemann.
What'd you make of the Nick Cox hit, just quietly? There was not much.
There wasn't a hit.
No.
And Kane called it out big time. And Kane called him out, saying if he's not up
and
to
Gary Lyon not happy with Kane calling him out.
Gary's a great believer in the head knock, and because of the Danny Frawley situation, he's very adamant about that. You've got to be aware of that, and you've got to be very careful what you accuse people of. I'm going to tip Sydney, only because they know how to win. But, losing Chad Warner is not ideal. So much at stake for Essendon, but there's always been so much at stake for Essendon. And they say they're going to play like nothing depends on it, but they should have been doing that weeks ago. I'll go for the Swans.
I'm going to go the Bombers in this one for a bit of an upset. I didn't think they were that bad last week. They just couldn't kick the goals. 1 goal, 9. They did a lot right. They kicked those goals. They win by 5 goals, and all of a sudden they're in a good position in the 8. It doesn't happen. Last roll of the dice. Interesting they didn't play Dyson Heppel. Is that the right move, given he retired throughout the week? But I think the Bombers can cause an upset. I'm still not sold on the Sydney Swans.
Wow, so you're going for Essendon. So Sydney are on top of the ladder and you're still not convinced?
What's their... They've won, 6 out...
Sydney are on top
lost 6 out of 8.
Sydney are on top of the ladder and you're not convinced?
100% not convinced.
All right,
because even last week they didn't play that well. Collingwood did everything bar win.
I don't know if you know, but that's what footy games are. Like, you do everything, you just got to get the points.
Yep.
That's what you got to do.
But you don't always take it on win-loss either. I think sometimes it's more the way they have been playing, that their best footy is good, but they haven't been doing it for long periods in games.
That last quarter might have been the correction they needed. That might be the actual.
Craig McRae said if it was played in Melbourne, it would have been a different result with the umpire.
Yeah, well, he'd know. They play 18 games in Melbourne. 3 games. 3 of us have tipped Sydney, and Hase is the outrider tipping the Bombers. If you've got any questions for us over the next half hour as we talk footy, 0487 736 736. Our next game, it is the Gold Coast Suns. Took Miller returns. What a superstar. Back in the lineup for Sexton. Bowie in. Clayton Oliver goes out of the lineup. Do you make a case? You don't have to give me a tip. Do you make a case for Melbourne up there on the Gold Coast?
Yeah, I do. There's been a big week at the Melbourne Football Club. There'll be some sort of response. They now have Clayton Oliver out. Not that that's a big one because he's had a season from hell, to be honest. But I think it's a 50-50 game, but we know Gold Coast are strong up there.
The Gold Coast will be winning there.
Gold Coast will be winning up there. I see what you're trying to do. You're trying to get the answer out of me before you make yours. Come on, mate. This is beat the boys. You're in front.
My tips are in
I'm going to run you down.
Now, this is an interesting text that comes in from John. The D's troubles seem to have now infiltrated the women's team. This was the story that Taylor Harris was at the Olympics over there and fangirling and had a photo taken with Serena Williams and the likes. Comes back a fortnight out from the season opener. She's done a quad. Wow.
Got egg on their face now, don't they?
That's really bad.
Oh, boy.
She is the A-grader of the competition almost. That is a huge blow. So, no lack of discipline there in regards to the AFLW. In regards to that, wouldn't happen on Daisy Pearce's watch, let me tell you. Or, of course, or Lisa Webb. All right, turn our attention to this is massive. This is massive. Tomorrow morning, 11:45 our time. It is Fremantle travelling to GWS. McMullen, Briggs, Canelio in for Thomas, O'Halloran, Grzuski, Liam Reedy on debut, O'Driscoll back in the lineup, Taberner goes out, Warner goes out.
They've won 6 in a row, the Giants. But again, they're not going that well. I'm not sure if you heard the comments from Daniel Hoyne throughout the week in relation to the expected score. So they take a stat based on whether you kick well or you don't, and you kick the ones you should or you miss. And they've been kicking them.
Do they?
And their opposition have been missing it.
So a bloke that sits there in front of a computer with stats is going to tell me they're not playing well and it's all about their scores. Predicted scores we're doing now, are we?
Yep, absolutely it comes into it. Now, we know when they get on their own terms. What I do know is Fremantle, when they play and when they hunt teams, they can take things away. And it was interesting to listen to Caleb Sarong on your show yesterday. He talked about the different layers of defence, stopping them early on, so attacking early so that they don't get the tsunami going. That will be the focus. If they had Josh Tracy, I'd be a bit more confident. I'm excited about Liam Reedy to see what he can do and to see whether he can give them first use at those stoppages and maybe do a bit around the ground. But I think the Giants will be winning, but they're not going as well as the 6 in a row suggests.
Giants will win. Sadly, Fremantle will leave it to the last round, of which I'm very confident they'll beat Port Adelaide here. I'm interested about, now this is only a lineup, predicted lineup. Jackson named in the forward pocket and Reedy named to lead the ruck. Do you think that will happen?
Yep.
Really?
Absolutely. I think last
Jackson's
week...
not a very good forward, mate.
No, but when you've taken Josh Tracy out, to have 2 changes in the forward line, like we saw last week with Matt Taberner and also Voss, it didn't work, and it puts more pressure on Jai Amos. So I think they'll start that way, and then they'll suck and see how Liam Reedy's going. If he's not going well, he could be a candidate to be subbed at some point, and then Jackson would go in there. But Jackson, he's been off this year. He's had a down year, Luke Jackson. Good start when he was the ruckman, but he does not take those marks, and he needs to spend a lot of time over the off-season working on his hands. And I'm not sure he's got full commitment working on his hands at training.
Okay, well, I'm going to ask you this, because if they've named their squad, these are the questions that have jumped off the page for me. So Taberner comes back in and Voss keeps his spot ahead of Taberner. Now, I don't know how, because I watched Patrick Voss last week, and I don't want to be disrespectful, but there was a patch where he dropped 3 marks, of which 2 I think he was concerned about what was coming. He's better than that. He was very down on confidence. 1, they have named Neil Erasmus as an emergency. His card has clearly been marked. And Michael Walters is also clearly fit because he's also been named as an emergency. There's a few layers to this lineup from Fremantle going forward.
I don't mind the Michael Walters one because he's had repeat hamstrings. So normally it's the 3 weeks. He's done the 3 weeks. Do they play him? Do they give him some minutes at Peel Thunder? We'll find out a bit more over the next couple of days. But maybe they are looking, Tim, with a view to winning one of these games. And Fremantle have done this in the past with a Ross Lyon coach team and Mark Harvey coach team where they've rested a few and just set themselves on the last one. I think Carlton do lose. I'll give you that tip right now. I think they lose against West Coast. I know you'll be going that way. Yeah. That means that Fremantle just need to win that last one and they're putting everything into it.
Yeah, okay. It's a good point you make here. I'm very confident they'll beat Port Adelaide next week, and I do think, again, West Coast will get hold of Carlton this weekend. But let's turn our attention to a big game Saturday at the MCG of all places. Collingwood can go back there and feel comfortable. Of course, it's against the Brisbane Lions. We all went for GWS for what it's worth against Fremantle. Will Parker in for Joe Richards. There's a lot of talk about Joe Richards and where his future lay with another couple of clubs sort of champing at the bit to try and get hold of him. Harry Sharp and Hipwood in for Pryor and Henry Smith. They go out. Still no Devon Robinson. He cannot get a game at the Lions. Where do you see this game being played in regards to the result? Because of the fact it is in Melbourne and you liked the way Collingwood played last week.
They're still alive.
Are they gone?
They're still alive. Here it is. What do you see?
Era over. Collingwood.
Line through it with a texter. It is done.
That's very good.
Era. They only got the one.
Very good, Paul.
Is it over? Will they come again a bit like Geelong have? Like they're an ageing list, and I don't think they have much scope to top up because they've given away their first pick. The injuries played a part. I think I got a little bit lucky with that comment because they did get their season back on track, but then injuries played a part. I just wonder, I don't think they'll win the premiership or be inside the top 4 next year, but I think they'll come again and could get close to the 8 next year with a good run. My check's so important for them.
Yeah, agree. My check.
But this game, they can still make it, Collingwood. I'm not sure Carlton can win either game. I think St Kilda would be heavy favourites against Carlton. and I don't think they'll get Mackay or Curnow back for that game. So they need to win this one, the Collingwood Football Club. Won't be easy. Brisbane, good side, and they probably just had the loss they needed to have after the run they had where they got the 9 in the row. I'll go with Brisbane, but wouldn't shock.
Do you think Nick Dacos will be in the All-Australian team?
Yes.
0487736736. John says Jackson Pryor will be at the Eagles next year and Devon Robinson take it to the bank. Thank you, John. We have gone for Brisbane, Hase Brisbane, Hammer Brisbane, and of course Scott goes for the Pies. Port Adelaide and the Crows. Yeah, no, shock horror. Saturday, huge game, Adelaide Oval. It is the showdown. Ryan Burton in, Todd Marshall out. That forward line of Port Adelaide looks very, very vulnerable, and Gallant comes in for Taylor Walker. Big game.
Yeah, I'm going with the Adelaide Crows.
Me too.
This one. I was impressed with them last week.
Paul.
And Phil Thorpe ranking back into the side.
Just get your powder dry.
I know. Ben Keys. I'm a big rap on Ben Keys. So Ben Keys was an unrestricted free agent this year, and he only got a 3-year deal. Are you surprised by that? He can really play. He hasn't been preferred in the midfield at the Adelaide Crows. He's become a really good pressure forward, and he's kicking goals now. But he should have waited, and there would have been a team like we're seeing with Perriman that would have been desperate to get a player like that, and probably would have offered 4 or 5.
Dan Curtin will line up in the forward line, so congratulations to Dan. Looks like he's finally cracked into the team a little late, but it might be a bit more comfortable going forward. So you've gone for the Crows, I've gone for the Crows, and Hammer and Scotty have gone for Port Adelaide in the showdown. Huge game. If Port Adelaide get beaten there, and then they come here, and I don't think they'll beat Fremantle next week, all of a sudden, I'll go back to my comment, it all of a sudden starts to look shaky for Port Adelaide's future and maybe their coach, Ken Hinkley, and his hold on the gig. Hugo Garcia is in for St Kilda for Angus McLennan. Nevitt Rowan in for Zach Tui, who's been managed, and Tanner Bruin, who got concussion here last week. Big game, hard to see Geelong. After what we saw with Geelong last week, I'll be going for the Cats.
Tempted to go with St Kilda, but I just can't trust this Ross Lyon coach team at the moment, so I'll stick with the Cats.
Are you surprised that Steele Sidebottom got a contract extension?
I am, yeah. But he's playing well enough, but it's just a matter of it's a tough one because when you've got a player that's deserving of it, but the list needs to turn over a little bit. They don't have a lot coming through, the youth, and that probably suggests to me that they're going to ante up next year and have another crack, and don't believe that they need to turn the wheel at this point.
Western Bulldogs brought in Freya, Gallagher, Artie Jones, Keith, McRae and James O'Donnell gone. Caulfield, English, Garcia. And North Melbourne have gone Stevens, Zach Fisher, Wardlaw and Dawson in for Harry Sheasel. Sheasel out is a big one, but they've got some good ins too. Wardlaw and Zach Fisher, very good players.
Yeah, Western Bulldogs for me.
I'm a bit worried about that lineup. Yeah, okay. Yep, I agree.
You reckon the North Melbourne can beat the Bulldogs?
Yeah. Well,
season on the line. That would spell the end for Luke Beveridge, wouldn't it? If he doesn't make finals, with what they've got, it would be a disappointment. And even the position that they're in right now, and if they win their next 2, they might be able to get up a bit higher. But this is what the Bulldogs do. They tease, but they've got some talent. Yeah, they certainly do. All righty, 2 more games to go. Finn McGuinness, Sarong and Josh Ward come in for the Hawks. Jack Ross, Coulthard and Blight are the ins for Richmond. No outs at this stage because it is a Sunday fixture. Hawthorn on a roll, and they just win easy. I'm a believer they can keep on going. There's no way they'll drop these next 2. They've come too far. What they're doing is very different. They've got the small forward brigade that's working. They're holding up in defence. Sicily's playing an extremely good role given that he's got a sore shoulder. And this could be one of probably the all-time great premierships if they were to go all the way. Can you see them going all the way,
No.
Tim?
No.
If they were, would it be the greatest premiership win of all time?
It'd be near on close to it.
1 and 6 they were. 0 and 5.
Yeah, look, it would be in the areas of the Western Bulldogs from several years ago when they came from 7th, got aided by the bye.
But these guys have come from last. And 18 months ago, we were talking about them the same way we've been talking about West Coast with their list. And he's turned it around in 18 months.
He has coached remarkably well. Yeah, totally agree. And what about the move of Lloyd Meek? Lloyd Meekers, what about that? I mean, for a little while it looked a little shaky for Lloyd, but he's been a key component in regards to their success. We've all gone for the Hawks. All righty, final game, and I've been spruiking this. I've been spruiking this all week, and in fact, I was spruiking this a long time ago. This is just 4 premiership points for the taking for West Coast. They just need to have a really off day to lose these points. Have a listen to this. Harry Edwards, Petruccelli and Jack Hutchinson in, no outs at this stage. Still no Tom Barras. The ins for Carlton. Lewis Young, Jackson Binns, Cooper Lord, Jack Carroll, Corey Durden, Harold Lemmy, Billy Wilson, Ashton Moyer and Dominic Kuhl. The outs, Sard, Mackay, Martin, Fogarty, Curnow and Boyd all injured. They're shite.
Be honest, Tim. How many of those players did you actually know? We work in the industry. Of those players named, how many didn't you know?
4. I knew 4 out of, so there's been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 named. I knew Durden, Carroll, Binns, only because he played one game, and Lewis Young. The rest I've never heard of. Didn't even know they're on their list. But I want to clarify this. They're shite. And I've been saying it for a little while and it got poo-pooed. Now, the biggest pushback that came on socials after we posted it was from Carlton fans saying, hey, we're coming over there in a couple of weeks and you'll work out how shite we are. The cards have fallen horribly wrong for them. Their injury list is horrible and it's season defining. They're done. You don't see them winning a game in the next 2 weeks.
If they do win, what does it mean for West Coast?
It's not good. It's not good.
It's a lot of pressure now because of what's happened. If they had played a full-strength Carlton, he goes in, they're competitive, good effort. Now the pressure is on the West Coast.
It's on Schofield right now. If Schofield can get this job done and just win 3 of the last 3 or 4, they'll get pumped by Geelong next week, and no one expects him to win in Geelong. My attitude would be he's got the job done. It's an unlosable game for West Coast on their form and Carlton's availability. It's an unlosable game. West Coast, take it to the bank. If you could have got the early markets around this sort of...
Somebody said when you say take it to the bank, it means a lot. There was a text that came through before.
Yeah. Let me just say one thing. If West Coast bring the spirit that they've shown over the last month, I have a feeling Harley Reid could have 45 touches on the weekend and kick 6. I really do. It could be Harley.
They've still got a good midfield, you know that.
Who?
Carlton. Yeah, they're not missing midfielders.
Yeah, when they look up and they go, okay, well, who are we kicking it to? Matthew Kennedy. They've got some smalls that are handy, but their forward line, there's no one over about 4'8".
McGovern's going down there. He'll play in the forward
Harry
line.
Edwards is not the worst going around. Liam Duggan's there. Jaden Hunt's been probably one of their upsides this year. Skinny fingers, Brady Hoff. Warden. Oh, no. West Coast. Mate, don't try and make a case for Carlton. It's impossible.